Why freedom feels like pressure. Picture a completely free afternoon. No obligations, nothing due, nobody waiting on you for anything. This is the thing people say they want. So why does it so often feel, within the first 20 minutes, like something is wrong? Not everyone notices it, but many people do. A vague weight where there should be lightness. A restlessness that arrives alongside the open time, not before it. The instinct to pick up a phone, start a task, find something to respond to. Not because they're avoiding anything, just because sitting inside open time feels, somehow, harder than it should. The popular explanation for this is distraction, that modern life has shortened attention, that overstimulation has made stillness uncomfortable, that people have simply lost the ability to be present. That explanation isn't wrong, but it doesn't explain why the discomfort arrives specifically when nothing is required. Not during a difficult day, during a free one. Think about what a structured day actually contains. A meeting at 9, a task due by noon, an obligation that arrives before the first cup of coffee is finished. The day has a shape before it begins, and that shape is doing something most people never notice. It's answering a question. Not loudly, quietly, in advance, before the day even starts. What should I be doing right now? That question sounds simple, but it contains several harder questions inside it. What matters? What matters most? Who is responsible for deciding? Structure absorbs all of those. Without announcement, without anyone noticing. The schedule decides, the deadline decides, the obligation decides, and the person inside the structure doesn't have to. This is the part that's easy to miss. People think of structure as a constraint, something imposed on time. But structure is also functioning as something else, as relief. Not relief from work, relief from the responsibility of deciding what matters. Consider the difference between responding and initiating. Responding means working with a shape that already exists. The email arrives, the request lands, the task appears, the direction is already there. Initiating is something different. Initiating means deciding not just what to do, but what is worth doing. Creating the direction before there's anything to follow. Most people spend the majority of their lives responding. From school onward, time tends to arrive pre-shaped. The schedule exists before the child does. The inbox fills before anyone asks it to. And over years of inhabiting time that someone else has already organized, something goes quietly unpracticed. The skill of generating direction from nothing. This is why smartphones have become such reliable companions in open time. Not only because they're stimulating, but because they immediately answer the question open time leaves open. What should I pay attention to next? The feed refreshes. A notification arrives. Something appears that wasn't there a moment ago. The person can respond again. The skill they practice their entire lives, the skill of responding to what's already present, is immediately available. And the deeper question goes quietly unanswered. Something similar happens at retirement. The moment many people spend decades working toward. Financial security, freedom, time that is finally, genuinely their own. And yet something unexpected happens in the first months after they stop. Not relief, not freedom. A strange flatness. Sometimes something that starts to resemble loss. For 40 years, the question was answered before they had to answer it. Monday at 8, this. Tuesday at 10, that. The whole week shaped before it arrived. And now, for the first time, nobody answers. The question falls entirely to them, and they discover, sometimes for the first time in their adult lives, that they have very little practice answering it. Open time, it turns out, is not empty. It's full of the questions that structure was quietly answering. What do I actually want to do? What do I actually care about when nothing external is directing me? What would I choose if the choosing were entirely mine? For some people, those questions feel like possibility. For many, they arrive as pressure. And here is where the investigation arrives somewhere unexpected. Because the pressure isn't only about not knowing what to do. There's something underneath it. When structure disappears and the question returns, what you choose says something. Not about your schedule, about you. If the day was shaped by obligation, you can't really be wrong about it. You did what you had to do. But when the time is yours, when the choice is yours, something becomes visible. Not because free time reveals a person's true self. Human beings are more complicated than that. But because intentions and actions are rarely as aligned as we imagine. A person may believe they want one thing, then discover that, left entirely on their own, their attention drifts somewhere else. Not out of dishonesty, not out of laziness, because attention is influenced by forces that often remain invisible while life is structured. Habit, mood, energy, fear, comfort, curiosity. A schedule can conceal those forces. An open afternoon often exposes them. This helps explain why procrastination can feel surprisingly emotional. The difficulty isn't always the task itself. Sometimes it's what the task might reveal. Whether the interest is really there, whether the motivation survives contact with reality, whether the imagined version of the future matches the person sitting in the chair today. Not because failure would be catastrophic, but because uncertainty can be easier to live with than discovery. Open time doesn't merely create freedom, it creates visibility. And visibility is not always comfortable. Free time functions like a mirror. Not the kind that shows you what you look like, the kind that shows you what you actually move toward when nothing external is deciding for you. And that reflection is uncomfortable in a way that has nothing to do with boredom. It's uncomfortable because it's honest. This is why even people who genuinely want free time will often fill it immediately with something structured. The class with a fixed time, the podcast that delivers something to consume, the task list written on a Sunday night. Not because they don't value rest, because self-imposed structure closes the mirror before they have to look into it. The discomfort of free time isn't really about time. It's about what free time briefly, unavoidably makes visible. When the schedule disappears, so does the person the schedule was producing. The employee, the parent, the student, the professional. Roles answer questions before we do. They carry their own implicit answer to the question of who you are. And in the open afternoon, in the unscheduled hour, those answers briefly go quiet. What's left is something most people encounter less often than they might expect: themselves. Without a role to perform, without a task to complete, without a structure confirming that they're doing the right thing. And that, not distraction, not overstimulation, not the collapse of attention spans, is what makes an empty afternoon feel, to so many people, like something they weren't quite prepared for. Perhaps the discomfort of an open afternoon isn't that nothing is there. Perhaps it's that for a moment, there is nothing standing between you and the question of what matters, and who you are when that question has nowhere left to hide. This content is based on established psychology and behavioral research. The next time an open stretch of time arrives, notice what fills it, not what you decide to do, what arrives before you decide anything. And I'm curious, when you suddenly find yourself with a completely free afternoon, what do you reach for first? Let me know in the comments. Quiet patterns.